Jesus performed literally thousands of miracles. The healings Jesus performed fulfilled a prophecy in the Old Testament book of Isaiah, chapter 53, written 700 years before Jesus, which says, "He himself took our infirmities and bore our sicknesses." If all of the miracles Jesus did were written down, I suppose the whole world could not contain the books that would be written. The Gospel of John, chapter 21, verse 25 says, of all of the healings Jesus performed, some of these have been duplicated by modern medicine today, albeit not with the same speed and effectiveness of Jesus. For example, in the days of Jesus, there was no cure for leprosy, but Jesus healed lepers. Today, modern medicine has been able to treat and cure leprosy. Jesus healed lame people, and advancements in orthopedics have allowed people who could not walk to be able to walk again, and other examples could be given. However, there is one miracle Jesus did that no one else in history has been able to duplicate, and that is the miracle of healing a man who was born blind. The Gospel of John records, ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. Chapter 9, verse 32. Modern medicine has been working on bringing sight to the blind, and while great advances have been made to improve the vision of those who have lost their sight, modern medicine is nowhere close to giving sight to someone who was born blind. The eye is the second most complex organ in the human body. The eye sends information to the human brain, which is the most complex organ not only in the human body, but in the world in general. The complexity of the human eye and brain show us that God created us, and when Jesus heals a man born blind, it shows us that he was God in the flesh. In the Gospel of John, chapter 9, we read, as Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been born blind. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so that the power of God could be seen in him. Gospel of John, chapter 9, verse 1 through 3. The disciples of Jesus thought the reason this man was born blind was because of a sin that he or his parents had committed. But Jesus tells them this was not the case with this man. The reason this man had been born blind is so that the power of God could be seen in him. There are some who teach that any sickness or physical ailment we have is because of sin in our life. And while many times this is true, it was not true in this man's case, and sometimes God will bring trials into our life to bring us to faith in him or to strengthen our faith in him, not because of some sin in our life. The way Jesus healed this man was unique. The Gospel of John, chapter 9, verse 6-7 says, then he, Jesus, spat on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. The pool of Siloam was the same place the priests in the temple would draw water for the Feast of Tabernacles. They would bring the water up to the temple and pour it out as they recited prayers. Jesus used this water as an illustration of himself by saying that all who believe in him will never thirst. They will, of course, have physical thirst, but their spiritual thirst will be quenched and they will live a fulfilled life. This man Jesus healed, who was born blind, immediately became a believer in Jesus. This miracle opened not only his physical eyes, but his spiritual eyes to the fact that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah. No doubt the religious leaders of Israel would have taught him as he was growing up that only when the Messiah came would his eyes be healed. Now that for the first time in his life he can see, he rightly concludes that Jesus is the Messiah, and he is even surprised when the religious leaders do not also see Jesus as the Messiah. Because of this man's faith in Jesus, the religious leaders excommunicate him from the temple. Unfortunately, this happens many times to people who come to believe in Jesus even today. They can be excommunicated from friends and family for faith in him. However, the scripture says it is better to please God than man. Jesus then says to the religious leaders who do not believe in him, I am come into this world that those who cannot see might see, and those who see might be made blind. John chapter 9, verse 39. What Jesus is saying is all who come to believe in him will be given spiritual sight, and they will see the eternal home in heaven that God has prepared for all who believe. But those who do not believe in him are spiritually blinded. An unbeliever may have physical eyes that can see, but his spiritual eyes are blinded. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. John chapter 3, verse 16.